Mutua is situated in the Channel Islands, with neighbouring countries such as Jersey, Guernsey, France and England. In January of 2020, COVID-19 hit mainland UK and devastated the economy and communities, in particular marginalised groups, isolated communities and tourist-focused areas. In August of the same year, the borders were shut and imports and exports were halted indefinitely. Exchanges and micro-bartering within the community began as a response to the economic impact the environment was having. Fast forward to 2022, imports were still limited and the island became increasingly dependent. It began with root vegetables and common fruit, while the community worked in solidarity with one another, similar to that of the war effort. 23 to 24, there was a shift in society, consciousness and culture. People began to move away from commercial buying and had a growing appreciation for traditional productions and exchange. In 2025, the borders reopened, but the island remained closed for tourist visits. Here they created a system similar to visas where the community is able to filter visitors' intentions. In 2032, the island reached carbon neutral status, which was through their crop growing, minimal meat production and by prioritising skills centred around reused products. In 2040, transformation and development of technical and social infrastructures occurred. They began to transform houses to become more eco-friendly, containing insulation and making use of the light wind positioning. In 2042, money became almost obsolete within the community as one-to-one trade increased, and so banks were abolished and the value of time was introduced this year officially. 2044, the environmental consciousness ruling was introduced. This created guidelines for the community to ensure that the ecosystem around them is not damaged. Fast forward to today, and the society is 3 generations strong and has expanded their community to the outside world. They have begun to share their ethos with other smaller communities to inspire adoption of practices and their values that are held. Today we are speaking to 2 residents on the island, Emily and Colleen, to get their views on life in the post-ownership society. Hi Emily, so you've just moved over to the island. Can we hear a little bit about what interested you in the island and what kind of helped you to make this bold move?
Oh, hi Alicia. I've recently moved to the society, and what appealed to me is the idea of a non-materialistic sharing society. I was feeling that my own values had shifted, so moving to a place that represented these felt like a really logical thing to do for me. And where I used to live, I didn't even know my next door neighbours. But here, you feel like you're really part of a big family, and relationships are really important because they're the basis of what the society's built on. So I thought it would be a really good place to move to. And also, I used to work as an engineer, so I felt that I could be of use to this society as I've got skills in a category that they were interested in, so it's mutually beneficial.
Colleen, your situation is very different and your grandparents were born on the island, is that right?
Yes, so my grandparents were born in Mutua, but due to a pandemic in 2020, borders were closed and the tourism based economy hit. So they had to change their way of living in order to be independent.
And what values has this instilled for you? Maybe you can give us a little overview of the island's mindset.
So they understood that they were lucky to occupy this land and that they needed to take care of it. So each individual took part in maintenance of the land and also all resources. For that, they started to live more according to nature. That means that organisms of different species work together, each benefiting from it. It can be humans and humans, but also humans and nature. As they saw themselves as part of the entire ecological system, nothing was truly owned by anyone. They restored, renewed, and revitalized their own sources of energy and materials.
So this shift actually began in the coronavirus outbreak.
Most importantly, at that time, exports and imports were very limited. So they started to swap things because everything like groceries were very limited in quantity. Moreover, their manufacturing skills were remarkable. So there was this shift in mind where everyone was valued for their skills. From that time, people practiced swapping a lot. All the objects and things from before 2020 were decided to be common. After that time, they started to only build on what they already had. All work added to objects after the beginning of the area is valued by the number of hours of work needed for them. So each new service is now seen as a working time, and there is also this possibility to exchange it with time credit, which you can use later. And honestly, people do not have this win at all costs attitude. They just exchange things that are relatively equal in value, and that's it, and they are really happy with that.
So I've heard you mention value a few times here. Does this apply to the people on the island as well?
So everyone living in this community is valued individually. So in fact, people and relationships are the most important things in this environment. We work together for the common good of Mutura, and we all contribute to the happiness of each other's and of the collectivity as a whole.
So, Emily, how was the transition from your old life to the new values that Clean's just told us about?
Yeah, so the process of moving to the society was actually like really easy, and Mucha made it like really welcoming because they provide a starter pack. So in the starter pack, that includes like a set of cards with key like values of the society, some time tokens, which is the currency that they use because they don't actually have any money, and it also includes a manifesto that you can sign to say that you agree with the society and everything that's going on, and a map on like an ideal layout for the society. So the map, I really loved that aspect of it because it shows how the society's developed and how it's laid out, and it's based on traditional Pueblo design of villages. So at the very centre of it is the community hub, and then around that there's all the other sort of like shared community aspects. So there's like a sharing library, there's a communal wardrobe, there's restaurants and kitchens which you can go and use, or you can go and have a meal there. There's a vegetable patch, there's a healthcare centre, there's a day care centre for elderly people or for young kids as well. So there's like everything you need there. And then in the circle surrounding that, there's everyone's houses. So the houses are quite small because the idea is that you spend the majority of your time within the community, and you don't actually own your house, that everything is owned jointly by the society. But you do have somewhere where you can sort of like go if you need to get away from things, and that you can decorate and sort of express your own individual style. And then in the ring surrounding that, there are all the professions. So there's the dairy farm, there's the brewery, there's the carpenters and blacksmiths workshops, there's artist studios, there's also like a fishing port. And then in the section surrounding that, there's all the land. So there's farmland, there's woodland, like arable farmland and agricultural farmland. And then there's also the sea for fishing. So yeah, it's really nice because you can always find where you are in the society using that method.
So, in terms of not owning things, what happens when someone passes on? Are you still entitled to an inheritance, or is that just passed on to the community?
Talking about my grandparents, I inherited valued intellectual and emotional characteristics from them. The learning of values and the importance of sharing is what they transmitted me. It is composed of the qualities, life model, and character that I developed during my childhood. This is a way for everyone to begin with the same.
So, Colleen, when you were younger, were you educated in like the more traditional sense, or does the community have an alternative way?
So, as a child, I went to school when I learned general things, and also I was educated to achieve my potential. And after a certain age, I think it was around 17 years old, I discovered all the jobs in the area. So I went to every service space in order to deeply discover them. This helped me a lot to find what I wanted to bring to the community later. Thanks to all these experiences, I decided what I wanted to do, and this was really good because I learned so many skills.
I can imagine this shift being quite drastic. What did you find the biggest change?
So the biggest change for me in joining the society is how the society values time. So because there is no like monetary currency, it's the value of things is determined by how long something's been spent on them, like how much time and effort has been put into them, which was a really different way for me to think about things. But I really love this because it means that everyone's equal. And for example, like medical work is equal to childcare, and traditional methods of labour, especially women's work that often aren't considered and take a lot more time but aren't actually paid work, they're valued equal to everything else. So yeah, that was the biggest change for me, to get used to how time is valued, but I definitely prefer it as a system.
And so you do have relationships with your neighbouring countries then?
So we do have an excellent healthcare center, but it's more for everyday needs. So year after year, we have built a great learning of medicine sciences. We have doctors, dentists, surgeons, and nurses. However, some specific treatments or surgery are not available. And so for that, we had to construct strong relationships with specific countries around Mutura. We have created some agreements with them. So, for example, we share our services with them, such as fishing waters, and in exchange, we can access their health services.
So there's no binding contract to make you stay. So how was this explained to you, Emily, during the introduction?
Yeah, and then so you definitely are allowed to leave. And before you become a full member of the community, like you can go over and you can visit for 3 weeks. And then if you decide you want to join, you go over and you spend a year with the community. And then at the end of that, you decide whether you want to really fully commit. And that's before you sort of give all your possessions like into the community or not. Yeah, so that's sort of the process of joining. But if you want to leave, then you definitely can leave. And the society organises this by, they have relationships with their neighbours, so with UK, with Ireland and with France, and where they exchange products such as their like dairy services and provide like dairy products to those countries in turn have an arrangement where if someone wants to leave the society, they will aid them in setting up on their own in the sort of outside world of the society. Although we hope that no one ever does want to leave the society because it's great. So yeah.
So thank you both very much for your time. We're just going to move over and have a look at the projections that the society has got for themselves over the next few years.
So for the future of the community, so by 2090, we're hoping that all habitable buildings are going to be replaced with eco-efficient buildings. So we're going to use the construction materials from the older houses and utilise them in different areas, but also to build new houses and to make sure that our layout of our society is as we want it. By 2092, we're going to replace the forest land that was once on the island prior to habitation. So we're aiming for a 45% increase, which will be 120% of the original amount. And this will assist us in moving towards our goal of being a carbon negative community. And then by 2098, we've pledged 100,000 hours towards innovating and developing new fabrics that will utilise our local and natural resources, and we plan on having some measurable results by this year.